thank you very much for that extreme contribution in terms of mitigating our extreme deficit in infrastructure.
President Buhari assures Chinese leader's special envoy that he will honor all agreements reached with China.
Nigeria clarifies position on the situation in South Africa.
The High Commissioner will be coming after the Special Envoy's return for consultations.
Tiv and Jukun ethnic groups resolve to cease hostilities to pave way for peace.
Whether you want to agree or not, the resolution for these issues can only come from the people that are directly involved in finding resolutions of this issue.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss matters arising from the just concluded 12th African Games in Morocco.
Over 4,000 athletes from the 53 nations on the African continent gathered in Rabat, Morocco for the 12th edition of the African Games, of course formerly known as All African Games, which held from the 19th to the 31st of August 2019.
Well, it was the first time that the African Games were being hosted by Morocco following that country's readmission into the African Union in 2017. Now, there were some 341 events across 23 sports at this year's Games.
That's right, Kingsley. And you remember that Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, was initially choosing to organize the 2019 Africa Games.
That's right, Kirian, but Equatorial Guinea was unable to host the Games due to economic challenges. And Zambia also declined to play host, citing lack of facilities as the major issue.
Of course, indeed, and in July 2018, Rabat, Morocco was eventually selected to replace Equatorial Guinea as host of the 2019 edition of the African Games.
Well, Egypt's delegation in Rabat broke the records, winning the highest number of medals to finish first at the Games, while Team Nigeria also came second.
That was a remarkable outing for Team Nigeria, and worthy of note was the fact that Nigeria sprang surprises by winning gold medals in 2 sports that were unpopular for.
Well, Kirian, you're absolutely right. The surprises were recorded in canoeing in particular, and of course gymnastics. And not many would have predicted that those 2 sports would fetch the country as many as 5 gold medals in Morocco, especially canoeing, where Nigeria won 4 gold medals.
But Kingsley, under normal circumstances, we should be doing well in canoeing. We have riverine areas, where people, most of them predominantly move with canoes. Even children, women, are into it. So we could develop that into what we have seen.
Yeah, but you said under normal circumstances. Yes. Under normal circumstances. That's a huge qualifier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, given that Nigeria is known for last-minute preparation and what we call fire brigade approach when it comes to sporting events and activities, what lessons should Nigeria learn from the Games? Could Nigeria have performed better with early preparations? And what can be done to develop unpopular sports in the country? These are questions that we hope our guest will be providing answers to on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, your breakfast show on NTA. My name is Kirian Umayo. Thank you for waking up with us this morning.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program, in the course of which we shall have our regular complimentary segments. And those segments include newspaper review, business, and others. Of course, our principal conversation today, Kirian, is sports. For those who've been following the U.S. Open, which will be concluded this weekend, it's happy news for the fans of Serena Williams, who again is through to the final of the women's singles after she destroyed her opponent in straight sets, 6-3, 6-1. Musbah Wahab colleague, is giving us the highlights of the morning news. Musbah, good morning. I don't want to irritate you this morning by asking what went wrong with Roger Federer.
Well, what actually went wrong with Novak Djokovic should be the question at this moment, that he lost to Grigor
for bowing out.
For bowing out.
In the middle of a tournament.
At least it took Grigor Dimitrov 5 sets to beat Roger Federer, by the way. And congratulations to Serena Williams. Maybe this time she's going to break that record of Margaret Court.
She's been working hard for that.
All right, to the news. Let's let you know that Zimbabwe's first post-independence leader, Robert Mugabe, has died at the age of 95. His family confirmed to the media that he died after battling ill health. Mr. Mugabe had been in hospital in Singapore since April. He was ousted from power in a military coup in November 2017, ending his 3-decade reign. He won Zimbabwe's first election after independence, becoming prime minister in 1980. Mugabe abolished the office in 1987 and became president instead. Back home, the federal government has reaffirmed its commitment towards providing the counterpart funding on all agreements reached with the People's Republic of China for the provision of critical infrastructure that will enhance the livelihood of Nigerians. President Muhammadu Buhari stated this while receiving in audience a special envoy of the Chinese leader, President Xi Jinping.
Thank you very much for that extreme contribution in terms of mitigating our extreme deficit in infrastructure.
This year, China will provide an additional grant of 100 million RMB yuan to Nigeria in support of your nation's economic development. Any project that is a priority of Your Excellency is a priority for China. If Your Excellency Nigeria needs anything specific, we are more than willing to study those needs and see if there's anything we can do.
Still at the presidential villa, President Muhammadu Buhari this Thursday granted audience to the chairman of the Southeast Governors Forum, the governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi. During their meeting held behind closed doors, issues relating to the security and developmental aspirations of the Southeast Zone were discussed. Governor Dave Umahi told newsmen that the governors in the region formally appreciate President Buhari for his prompt response to the deplorable situation of the Akano Ibiam International Airport, Enugu.
Of the airport, consequent to a letter to him to intervene. And that closure has saved a lot of lives because if you land at that tarmac, you will see that the tarmac was gone. We are aware it wasn't constructed by the present administration, but the tarmac became bad as soon as it was completed. So we discussed about the timeline for the completion. You're all aware that towards December we have a lot of, heightened activities, socio-economic activities in Southeast, and the Enugu is our base, is like our capital. What Kaduna is to the north is what Enugu is to the southeast. And so we pleaded with Mr. President for the extension of the tarmac so that it can accommodate bigger aircraft. We pleaded with Mr. President to do what he did when we had the same issue in Abuja International Airport. We don't really have new challenges with our traditional herdsmen that some of them have been living with us for quite a long time. But the foreign herdsmen, most of them don't even speak Hausa, neither do they speak Fulani or English, and a number of them has been called by security agencies, and this introducing a new dimension, the name of herdsmen. So we informed Mr. President that we, as governors of Southeast, we ban these foreign bandits in the name of herdsmen. And so we let Mr. President know that.
Governor Dave Umahi of Ebonyi State. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says more young people are leveraging on opportunities in agriculture through the use of digital technology, which is changing the face of a sector in Nigeria and Africa. Vice President Osinbajo stated this during the presidential discussion session of the African Grain Revolution Forum in Accra, Ghana, with the theme Grow Digital, leveraging digital transformation to drive sustainable food systems in Africa. The Vice President added that Nigeria is looking at the application of digital technology not just in agriculture, but in the society and in economy as a whole.
Practically everywhere that these disruptive technologies have touched, they've been completely revolutionized, and I'm not so sure that we have a choice. I don't even think we have a choice. I think it's inevitable. And what we're going to see is that, by and large, digital technology is simply going to change the face of agriculture in Africa.
Nigeria has formally clarified its position on the situation in South Africa, saying what it desires is a de-escalation, not increased tension between the two countries. Consequently, the federal government says it has not recalled the nation's High Commissioner to South Africa, but considering an invitation to him for consultation if necessary. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyama, gave his clarification at a media briefing in the State House. Government says a recall at this time, even if not ruled out, would be a short-sighted move. Not having diplomatic contact is not a good development for now. Nigeria envoy would therefore remain at its post.
To withdraw or recall our ambassador. What I pointed out yesterday, our High Commissioner in South Africa, what I pointed out yesterday is this. Mr. President has sent a special envoy to South Africa. So we're going to wait for the report of the special envoy when he comes back in about 2 days' time. And on that basis, after we receive the report, it's likely that we might have to supplement that report by also calling the ambassador, the High Commissioner, back for consultations so that Mr. President will be able to get as comprehensive and full a picture of the situation in South Africa. So the High Commissioner will be coming after the Special Envoy's return for consultations. And then once Mr. President now has a full briefing from all the actors directly engaged, we'll be able to make an informed decision on what further steps we take.
Meanwhile, the federal government has renewed its appeal to Nigerians who are angered by the xenophobic attacks on their compatriots in South Africa not to engage in reprisal attacks. The Information and Culture Minister, Lai Mohammed, made the appeal at a media briefing in Abuja.
The federal government will leave no stone unturned to protect Nigerian citizens anywhere around the world, including South Africa, where they've been subjected to repeated xenophobic attacks with terrible consequences that include loss of lives and property. We also want Nigerians to know that wrong videos and disinformation are being circulated on social media to inflame passion and distort the plight of Nigerians in South Africa. Nigerians should be wary of the purveyors of these wrong videos. They might not even be Nigerians. We strongly warn hoodlums who may wish to hide under the peaceful protest by Nigerians to loot, maim, and kill, that the security agencies will apprehend and bring them to justice.
Now, stakeholders from Benue and Taraba states have resolved that there should be immediate cessation of hostilities between the Tiv and Jukun ethnic groups in Taraba State to pave way for peace-building efforts. These formed part of a communique issued at the end of a peace meeting in Abuja coordinated by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, towards resolving the lingering crisis. The meeting also resolved that the governors of Benue and Taraba State should make strong pronouncements condemning the crisis and also visit the affected communities as a confidence-building measure.
Come from the people that are directly involved in finding resolutions of this issue. We cannot continue to allow this conflict to perpetuate itself, because that means we will not have anything to bequeath to the generation that is yet unborn.
The Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Malam Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, has applauded the developmental strides of Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State in touching the lives of the citizens positively. This was during his visit to the governor at the Government House. Refit Jos.
Your Excellency, let me state for the record our appreciation of your rival peace-building efforts, which have seemed to be near total return of normalcy to Plateau State. These efforts have been acknowledged both nationally and internationally.
First of all, seek for the usual cooperation, more support as you are doing, and also employment opportunities. Because today we have taken one, we want to replace them with about 4 or 5. If we have the opportunity in NTA under your watch.
The Federal Capital Territory Administration says it is keen into the National Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Wash Action Plan and hopes to become a reference point for safe water and good sanitation. FCT Minister Mohammed Musa Bello gave the assurance when he received his counterpart from the Ministry of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, who came on an advocacy visit on the ministry's Open Defecation Free campaign.
We're also asking FCT and the states to provide the necessary legislation against open defecation and reckless urination practices.
A team under the Federal Capital Development Authority has already identified locations where we intend to put up public toilets in partnership with the private sector. We already have prototype designs in such a way that they will also add to the aesthetic and the beauty of the environment, so that really ordinarily you wouldn't even know they are public toilets.
That's the news. Based on Good Morning Nigeria, the program continues. By the way, a very topical issue of African Games comes up. After now, Nigeria became second. We actually tried our best, both Kingsley and Kieran. I think we should do more because we're talking about a difference of over 100 medals here. We came second, but far second to Egypt.
Well, I think it's high time Nigeria started making use of her superiority, in terms of numbers, her numerical superiority, in sports in Africa, not just Africa, but globally. And in the course of this program, we also find out the level of performance of African athletes, vis-a-vis global, tournaments that's coming up ahead.
Well, that's right. It's important, but I think that perhaps one response to the inquiry by our colleague Musbah Danwahab is to say, look, how do we develop so-called unpopular sports in Nigeria? Earlier, we were talking about the fact that, if all conditions were right or if things under normal circumstances, why should it be that we remain underperforming in water sports at the highest level, whether the African Games, Commonwealth Games, or the Olympics? And you find that usually you have a lot of medals that are available.
Individual medals.
Yeah, that's water sport I'm talking about. And then you have others, the archery, there's archery, there's shooting, although these are usually very regulated. And then for our track and field, I think the time has come now for us to move away from the fact that we are champions of the sprints. Where are the middle distance runners? Where are the long distance runners?
Exactly.
That's right. So where are the long distance runners? Those are the issues.
All right, we've got our guest on the line to do justice to this discussion after the break. Good morning.
Yeah, Mom, you are extraordinary. You always go the extra mile to make sure my breakfast is made with extra nutritious Milo. I want to say a big thank you. You are extra precious and extra super.
Milo is thanking moms for being extraordinary by giving the family an extra 50 grams of delicious Milo for every 500-gram pouch bought. Don't miss out. Offer valid while stocks last.
Milo! Thank you. Thank you, sir. Prince, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is village headmaster tune.
So, Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
Village headmaster is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already? This is not a joke.
It is a national celebration. NTA and village headmaster family are commemorating 50 years.
Hey, Prince, tell me, when is our golden jubilee?
It is from the 8th to 11th of October 2019.
I have to go and get ready. It's time to party.
Women. But we, men, will be there too.
Prince.
There's a smarter way to live with Airtel Binge Plan, the ideal data plan for those heavy data moments. Get a 2 GB daily binge plan for 500 Naira. Dial *141# to activate. Live smarter with data.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, let's talk business. More sectors of the economy are beginning to receive the needed investment opportunities through the Focus Labs. Chimobi Walter-Naji already is standing by on Business News with the details.
Nigeria has realized the sum of $22.5 billion investment under the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan Focus Labs. The investments are in 5 key sectors of manufacturing, agriculture, power, gas and transportation. A senior special assistant to President Muhammadu Buhari on Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, Effiong Asian, says 9 more sectors will be prioritized this year.
The President told us that to be able to catalyze the investment and also bring economy to its path of growth, government budget of $1 needs to speak to private sector investment of $5. So the government budget is talking to $5 investment of the private sector.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, says the federal government will, in the coming weeks, set up donor coordination units to chart a roadmap for setting up a multi-donor trust fund. The fund will ensure best value for all donor-assisted activities in the country. She said the DCU would be co-chaired by herself and the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba. A statement from the Director Information in the Ministry says the Minister considers aid to be most effective when it is well coordinated with mutual accountability mechanisms for government and donors. Above all, it must be aligned with government's strategic development priorities. And now to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where the capital market closed flat Thursday, 5th September at minus 0.25%. Here is a graphic representation of the trading figures.
With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Many thanks, Chimobi, for the business package. Up next for us on the program is a review of some of the papers we have this morning.
Let's welcome Bayo Toyebi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kyria. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Hi, Bayo. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Kyria?
Yeah, we have four
papers
here.
One of which will be the editorial.
First, let's look at a Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint on the right-hand side of the nameplate. We have Access Bank Lagos government partner on 10 billion loan for women. It's on page 31. But directly below that, FIRS contributes 59.7% to a federation account. That's by Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. And Matawale's foundation for 9 billion Zamfara 3-star hotel. It's on page 13. And NMPC dispels aviation fuel scarcity rumor. Page 30 is where you get the details of that story. And now the lead story, and of course the lead story, even on the Daily Trust, we are addressing the issue. That's on xenophobia attacks. That's the kicker. We are addressing the issue, says federal government, with 5 adjoining stories. The appeals against reprisal assures foreigners of safety. Anambra Governor Obiano urges more dialogue. Go on offensive, APC tells Buhari. Now, alerts on fake social media video clips. Rep Olatubosu hails Buhari's moves. And of course, below the picture story, the Blueprint newspaper on insecurity, we must free local government finances from state governments. And 2,742 inmates on death row in Nigeria, says NTS boss. And I will honor all pacts with China, Buhari assures special envoy. That's on page 5. Abduction. Okowa's wife's sister released after 150 million naira ransom. That's on page 20. Another financial crisis looms as Nigeria's debt cost rise. Page 31 is where you got the story. That's it.
All right. Let's take a look at the Daily Independent newspaper. Daily Independent, above the nameplate, there are 4 headlines there. Let's take 3 of them. Direct your grievances to federal government. Southeast governors tell Kano. That's Kano of IPOP. This is on page 11. Nationalize MTN. Shomole urges Buhari, calls for boycott of South African goods and services. Details can be found on page 41. EFCC nabs suspect on FBI list in Kaduna. Details can be found on page 8. And the lead story comes with a kicker. EFCC chair Buhari to represent Magu to Senate for confirmation. With 2 riders, confirmation will give Magu greater confidence. That's according to Professor Isha Sage. Another rider says, 9th Senate, a rubber stamp. And not surprised. And that's according to rights activist Odumakin. Details of the story on the front page with a continuation on page 10. 2,742 inmates on death row in Nigeria. And that's attributed to the Controller General of the Correctional Services, formerly known as Prison Service. It says Correctional Services Act allows officers to reject inmates due to overcrowding. That's on page 41. Oando, now low price stock. Another story on page 41. Communist Party, that's the Chinese Communist Party, seeks to sell ideology to APC. That's on page 41 as well. But on page 8, professors in Ondo tertiary institutions to retire at 75. Second lead story on the front page, South Africa shuts missions in Nigeria over fear of attack. And let's take 2 riders there. South Africa's Ramaphosa says at least 10 killed in riots. And government's participation in World Economic Forum not against, governors' participation rather, at World Economic Forum not against federal government directive. That's attributed to Foreign Minister Oyama. Bayo.
Well, let's start with the running story on the xenophobia. South Africa has closed down its High Commission in Abuja and the consulate in Lagos. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation says the closure was effected on Tuesday due to recent threats against the mission and staff and the property of South Africans. Dr. Naledi Pardo expressed displeasure at misleading reports on social media about attack on heads of mission and in Nigeria. He said those reports are totally false. She also said that there's a false claim about vandalization of the High Commission and Consulate. He said that although the head of mission and the High Commission in Nigeria says they are in constant contact with the Nigerian authority and extra security has been provided for the South African offices. Dr. Pardo has also blamed drug dealers for the xenophobic attack on Nigerians. She pleaded with the federal government of Nigeria to assist South Africa in preventing what she described as Nigerian drug dealers in narcotics from coming to South Africa. Meanwhile, the attacks on Africans, and especially Nigeria and South Africa, was triggered by fracas between a taxi driver and drug dealers. A local media, the radio it was, had wrongly identified the national of those involved in the drug, and this led to the destruction of property of those suspected to be behind the drug dealing business. Many Nigerian businesses are said to be within the area where some drug suspects operate. And some Nigerians too in South Africa have been also complicit in the claims about drug dealing. Meanwhile, the vigilance group, which were trying to check the reaction from the death of the taxi driver, were infiltrated by Zulu camp workers and turned everything into violence. Like Kingsley read earlier on, the All Progressive Congress chairman has demanded the federal government should nationalize South African companies operating in Nigeria. He identified the telecom company, a satellite company, and 2 banks as entities that should be nationalized. You recall that Nigeria actually nationalized the British Petroleum during the fight against apartheid, particularly on the issue of Southern Rhodesia and South Africa. But the chairman of the party says that South Africa authorities have shown less commitment to bringing the attackers to an end. He also called for the stoppage of South African Airways and its landing right for coming back to Nigeria. But the Minister of Information has identified that yes, tempers are high, but there is need for us to be cautious. He says if Nigerians are angry, they are justifiable so, but we must not resort to self-help. He cautioned against those inflaming passion using fake video on social media to inflame passion among Nigerians. He identified some of them. He said, for instance, there is a video of a person set ablaze, and he identified that as a victim who was a Mozambican, and this happened in 2018, 11 years ago, and has nothing to do with Nigeria. Another one was persons who were jumping from a fire in India last May, and it was shown to mean Nigerians that were being threatened in South Africa. So he has cautioned that we need to be very, very careful.
Yeah, there's indeed need for such cautioning, because according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it's until the envoy sent to South Africa by the president returns with a report, the picture of what played out in South Africa will be clearer, for whatever decision anybody wants to take, to come. And the calling for nationalizing South African, many Nigerians wouldn't think it's time to do that now, until all issues, are looked into when the envoy returns.
Well, it's at the peak of the temper. Everybody is angered by the persistent killing. You will recall that in the past 3 years, 130 Nigerians are reported to have been killed in South Africa. So everybody certainly will be outraged. But at the meantime, tempers are beginning to cool. The Foreign Affairs Minister has confirmed that even Nigeria's High Commissioner has actually not been recalled. What is happening is that the envoy, which is led by the head of the Nigerian Intelligence Agency, is arriving in South Africa. They will hold meetings with the president of South Africa, and he will return with the Nigeria's High Commission. It is after they have briefed the president about the true position of things that now we will now hear what the reactions will be here. And therefore, for now, tempers should be calm.
Well, that's to be noted, Bayo. But I think that what Adams Oshomole, the chairman of the governing Progressives Congress, has said should be taken note of. The APC, of course, has the government in power, but APC is not government. Government is taking its own steps, but it is significant that the kind of ideas emanating from the APC should be noted. Because when you have international relations and then you need to escalate your reactions to a hostile country, and there are all kinds of measures that will be on the table.
Yes.
It is not sufficient that the foreign minister of South Africa is claiming that Nigerians are drug peddlers. That's misleading. All Nigerians in South Africa are not drug peddlers.
Certainly not.
Certainly not. And then the number of issues arising from that. Look, will arson and lynching be the response to drug peddling in any jurisdiction? Arson and lynching, where people are burnt alive, and Nigerians have been killed, extrajudicially. If so, what are the law enforcement authorities doing with South Africa? How many Nigerians have been arrested? If you arrested them for drug peddling, and they are not South African nationals, then of course you try them, imprison them. At the end of their prison term, you remove them from your country. But why has that not taken place? That's one. Secondly, Kirian, just hold on a second. Secondly, we keep hearing this smear campaign against Nigerians. I mean, none of us here is a drug peddler. I'm very familiar with South Africa, but I've never entered a police station, never been arrested. None of us has ever been arrested. Who are the manufacturers of those drugs in South Africa? Who are the importers of those drugs? The South African Foreign Minister of Indian descent, she knows what I'm talking. She should know what people are talking about. How drugs do get into their country, those who are importing those drugs, and other nationals who are involved. Madagascar has already cancelled a friendly match with South Africa on account of what is happening. Zambia also cancelled a friendly match with what is happening. Zambian students have been protesting. The South African mission, the consulate in Lubumbashi in Congo, has been damaged by protesters.
There is no doubt the fact that extrajudicial killing, cannot be condoned, in any part of the world. And if you're talking about nationalizing some of the business concerns of South Africans, Nigerians have big-time businesses in South Africa. Yes. Big-time. What I mean, factories of sorts. Electronic business. Do you understand? It is there. So please, we should be cautioned. And again, like I said earlier, until the envoy returns, because there are many issues, about surrounding this, right? And it's only the people who live there can tell you what is actually on ground. Community, habiting together, or is a different thing altogether. Apart from the drug peddling and all of that, characters, behavioral patterns, on daily basis and all that. And when you talk about drug has to do with killing. In fact, the information some people have is that on daily basis, people are killed on drug-related conflicts and struggles and all of that. And in South Africa. And majority of them are Nigerians, historically speaking. And that is why it is important for us not to caution and then wait for this to return.
You can't say history.
It can't be all.
You said historically speaking. Yes. What period, when did that history start?
If you have been following, if you have been following development in South Africa,
so from what period?
Since Nigerians made South Africa their second home. If you go to some cities in South Africa, it's the second home to Nigerians. As a matter of fact, in some communities, 80% of people living there, you'll be surprised. Small communities are Nigerians.
Yeah, all right.
There are great numbers.
Bayo, just hold on a second, because he said historically. That was what I was asking him. When did the history start?
When the trend started.
When did that
When the killing started and the trend started,
we must understand that there was a time when Nigerians were properly welcome in South Africa.
That's right.
Something must have changed. And that's why we're having this. But the anxieties in Nigeria, the anxieties in South Africa, and I think leaders on both sides are now worried, and something must be done. With the envoy sent and the High Commissioner coming after briefings, proper steps will be taken.
All right, let's go to Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, well, quickly now, below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspaper, flood. Death toll hit 16 in Jigawa as 3 drowned in Nasarawa. It's on page 11. Ebola survivors face possible kidney damage on page 3. FIRS contributes 59.7% to Federation account in 3 months. It's on page 16. And now the lead story, still attacks. Buhari envoy NIA DG meets Ramaphosa today. South Africa and Nigeria disagree over compensation. Now, the photo story there is quite striking. You know, if you see the cattle in that photograph, these are rustled cattle that have been recovered, right? And that goes to show that cattle rustling is still, thriving, in parts of Nigeria. And at the foot of a daily trust, we have Buhari meets Chinese President's envoy, special envoy, Kogi crisis rocks PDP over Wada's emergency on page 13. Yellow fever, Bauchi to vaccinate Yankari workers and communities on page 4.
In the area of politics, the People's Democratic Party have a governorship candidate for the Bayelsa November 16 election has emerged. He is Donye Diri. In Kogi, we have Engineer Musa Wada, who emerged as the PDP governorship candidate. However, 2 other aspirants, Dino Melaye and Abubakar Ibrahim, have petitioned the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party. Abubakar Ibrahim recorded 701 votes from the primaries, while Dino Melaye scored 70. The winning candidate, Engineer Musa Wada, scored 748. All of them were at Wadata House. 2 of them were to protest. The third was waiting to receive his flag to be the contestant in the gubernatorial election. Meanwhile, there are all indications that budget 2020 might be passed and might probably fall within the January to December budget cycle. This indication was given the Minister of Finance and National Planning, National Budget, Zainab Ahmed, that initiatives are being put forward to ensure that budget is presented to the National Assembly this month, September. And leadership of the National Assembly had indicated that if the budget is presented early enough, they are sure that they will try and pass it so that it will fall within the January to December budget cycle.
Once the appropriation bill is tabled, business begins.
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's take a look at what editorial this one is coming from Daily Times newspaper at page 9. Curbing HIV/AIDS menace in Nigeria. That's the title of the editorial. Bio.
Well, the Daily Times is happened on the fact that AIDS became a pandemic in the world 3 decades ago, and so far, up to date, the world has not overcome AIDS. It records that about 239,542 tested positive for AIDS in Nigeria. This was out of the 9.4 million people that were screened. And so they are saying that 18% of persons living with AIDS need to be given support so that they can actually manage their condition. The issues raised in the editorial requires the fact that the initiatives on government, particularly by 3 identified agencies, the Presidential Commission on AIDS, the National AIDS Program, as well as NACA, have all gone under. The initiatives are slow. It also points out that the danger that some foreign donors that were providing drugs that were subsidized by government for people living with AIDS have also withdrawn their support. And therefore, to fight successfully the AIDS, and particularly those from child to mother transmission, the initiatives must be encouraged and supported by government. They said that there is a need to rejig the information system so that people will continue to be aware of the AIDS pandemic, particularly in the areas where AIDS is still very prevalent.
Okay, Bayo, we would like to thank you for being around. We hope you enjoy your weekend. And of course, we'll see you on Monday. All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our 2 topics for discussion later on today.
Digital studio equipment is a critical aspect of modern television that requires special skills for their operation and maintenance. These skills define the content and output of television and are acquired only through professional training and experience. NTA TV College JOS is organizing a special 4-week intensive course on digital studio equipment maintenance for engineers and technical officers in public and private television stations. The course will equip participants with modern techniques, technologies, and skills for effective and efficient operation and maintenance of digital studio equipment. Also, a special 4-week course on intermediate photojournalism and photography will run simultaneously. It is an essential course for photojournalists, photographers, public relations and information officers to upscale their skills and capacities in photojournalism. Participants will be equipped with modern skills in photo editing, studio and outdoor lighting, and more in just a few weeks. The venue for both courses is the serene and secure environment of NTATV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Date 16 September to 11th October 2019. Course fee 100,000 naira only per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTATV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
And I will thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. To kickstart our conversation this morning, let's take this background report by Victor Azu.
12th African Games has ended in Morocco with a final bronze medal for Team Nigeria in the women's lawn tennis event to cement the country's second-place finish on the overall medals table. The men's football team won silver medal after failing to replicate the feat of the women, losing by 2-0 to fellow West Africans Burkina Faso on Friday. The last time the country won it was in 1973. In the women's javelin throw, Wanaga Kelechi Promise won gold for Nigeria. The same result recorded for the country in the women's shot put from Olatoye Oyeshade Adetola. Team Nigeria also won the women's 4x400 meters relay. Nigeria garnered a total of 126 medals, 46 gold, 33 silver and 47 bronze, as Team Egypt finished top of the medals table. South Africa, previously occupying the second position, finished third, and the host nation Morocco are placed fifth at the end of proceedings.
The ministry, as a deliberate policy, has supported federations with capacity. The results culminated to a more competitive approach to finding athletes that will represent Nigeria. And this is what has translated to the modest achievement that we have.
All right, thank you very much for that background. We have a guest with us here in the studios, and I hope also our connection to our Enugu Network Center is also fine, and we'll get our guest from that center. First, let's welcome Al Hassan Yakmut, who was Chief of Mission of Team Nigeria to the just concluded 12th African Games. Yakmut, pleasure to have you with us on the program. You were also DG at some point of the National Sports Commission.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. We also have with us in the studios a sports analyst. It's a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Mike Enahoro. Mike, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning Nigeria.
And here in the Abuja studios also Uche Unwodo, who's another sports analyst. Uche, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, and from our Enugu studio, we have Mary Onyali, Olympic medalist. Mary, we are glad to have you join us this morning on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
We'd like to begin with you. I believe, quite frankly, that you watched a part of the sporting activities that made the 2019 Africa Games. I'd like you to look at it from the perspective of quality. You know, how would you rate, the quality of performances, both individual and collective performances, in the just concluded Africa Games?
Yes, thank you very much. I was there live and direct. I watched almost all the games, but what we needed to do to have gotten a little bit closer to the Egyptians, I would say would be deliberate, early preparations. Our federations needs to be more enhanced or helped in terms of preparing the athletes. They are giving funds a bit too late or not enough or not at all. Most federations were struggling to prepare the athletes, and that you saw in the performance of our athletes at the games, even though to the general bird's eye view, it looks like we did great. But really, technically, we were still struggling because we have a lot of pockets of areas that we should have done better. But because of the late preparation of most federations, funding to the federations to prepare their athletes, it made it very difficult. So we need to take cognizance of that in the future.
All right. Thank you very much, Mary Onyale. We'll return to you shortly. But let's bring in now the chief of mission, the chef of mission that's often referred to, Al Hassan Yakmoud. What's your overall assessment of Team Nigeria's performance at the games?
Thank you so much. It's a loaded question, and I think I will take it from the perspectives of what happened physically on ground in Morocco. Nigeria participated in 22 different sports, went with 314 athletes, and Egypt went for 25 different sports with 324 athletes. South Africa went with 114 athletes and then placed third and participated in only 14 sports. So by assessment in terms of number of sports and number of medals and number of athletes, Egypt topped. Then in terms of quality of participation, for going with only 14 sports and 114 athletes, South Africa had the best quality of participation. And then Nigeria participated in 22 sports and medaled in terms of gold medal in 13 sports, and then general other sports making 15 sports. So which gave Nigeria a total of 127 medals, but with 314 athletes and then 22 sports, which shows that Nigeria had medals in only 14 sports out of 22. So which means there is a technical lacuna in participation and preparation, which means strategic planning would need to come in subsequent events. But again, in terms of honor, dignity, Nigeria was able to come out with a performance that did not embarrass the nation. The most challenging area is that how come Egypt was able to concentrate in swimming, where they had 14 gold medals, and then went to penetrate our area of strength in weightlifting and wrestling. They picked up 5 gold medals in wrestling and picked up 31 gold medals in weightlifting out of the 46, leaving Nigeria with 16 and then 17 other silver medals. Those silver medals in weightlifting ordinarily should have been the gold medals that we should have added to the 16 to make us superior. But nonetheless, it was also the return of Nigeria in weightlifting because we had gone backwards some couple of years. So I think there are pointers that if we take the report, the technical analysis of Nigeria's participation seriously and go by the words of Mary Onyale, we'll be able to return a better result in 2023 in Ghana.
Yeah, Uche, What's your take on our performance? Mary Onyali talked about technicalities, and Yakmut did same. And all the time, we talk about preparations, both in football and other, sporting activities. When can we come out of that? Uche, in your contribution, looking at making an assessment of what you saw, when can we get out of this issue of preparation?
Okay, when you look at it, if you look at what happened in 2015 and what happened in 2019, you would say that in 2019, 314 athletes, you have 127 medals, you have done well because you have lesser athletes than what you had in 2015, which was about over 500 of them. You would say you had done well, but that's not really the case. In terms of preparation, they had 6 weeks to prepare. The federations, they had 6 weeks to prepare. It was a problem because most federations depend on the funding coming from the ministry, which is not supposed to be so. Most federations just have this lackluster attitude of sitting back and waiting for government largesse. It doesn't work like that. If America, South Africa, most of their federations, they sit down and wait for government money, it might not come. They might not even participate. Now, and they always talk about, and when it comes to competition, they're always talking about, okay, let's concentrate on the comparative side that we have advantage at. Most of those sports that we have advantages to other countries, you find out that most countries are now catching up to us. Example, Egypt. When it came to the table tennis women's finals, an Egyptian won, and she won well, and she showed it. She won in Lagos 2 weeks before the All African Games at the ITTF Championship in Lagos. She won and she came back to Rabat and won again. So now you will now look at most of these sports that we say it is our comparative areas, this is where we should concentrate on. If we keep doing that year in, year out during competitions, we cannot grow. We need to learn how to balance the federations that are already okay, that give us medals. We need to balance them off and know that we are maintaining them. We are helping them to maintain what they have already achieved, or they are getting better. Then the ones that we have weaker, we have a problem with, we're struggling with, then we concentrate on it and make sure that we get better by the day. Why do you think that, okay, for 2023, I won't be shocked if Egypt they've started planning on how to just sweep up all the medals. And we don't even have a blueprint of what we want to do in Ghana. That is another problem. Some federations actually do sit down, and when they wait for this money, it's not coming, they blame the government. No. I will give you a typical example of a federation that has not organized a single event in Nigeria, and they got a gold medal at Rabat. But is that enough? I'm talking about gymnastics. Is that enough? You haven't organized anything. You bank on the fact that a coach has an academy that you can actually poach on that academy and get athletes that will represent Nigeria. What have you done to actually bring out talents that will represent us in future? Gymnastics is a sport that you have to start very early, and you start training them and make sure that when they get to the peak, they would be able to win something. Now look at athletics. If Blessing Okagwari was around, there's a possibility that we might not have won the 4x100 meters. Why? Because she's at her departure lounge. She's stretched. 2 weeks before Rabat, she was in Doha. She was getting ready, she was still competing and what have you. So if you give others opportunity, if you start early in terms of preparation, you don't have to always wait for government. There are corporate bodies that want to partner with you. But one of the problems we have with federations, some of them are, sorry to say this, some of them are too lazy to think. If you're too lazy to think and bring out something, put something down and say, this is what we have as a blueprint and this is what we want to do. Can you help us? Then you see people helping you. But if you don't put down something, you don't bring anything to the table, and you always want money, nobody will want to come to you. So now federations need to start thinking, needs to start organizing competition, needs to start bringing in this talent, because there is no time. We are always waiting for, we're always going about it with a fire brigade approach. And when we get there, the only reason why we actually do win a whole lot of medals when we go to All African Games is because of resilience, not because we're ready. It's because of the resilience of the athletes, of the
Individual
players,
performances.
individual performance. They want to market themselves. They want to be out there, not because most of the federations have done spectacularly well.
All right, Uche, thank you very much. Mike, let's come in. I mean, in addition to your assessment of Team Nigeria's outing, I would like you to also address one of the points raised by Al Hassan with regard to the numbers, the absolute numbers. Oh, Nigeria went with over 300 athletes. These are the number of gold medals that we got, silver and then bronze. But when we disaggregate those numbers, can we also account, for instance, for the fact that you had a soccer team? The soccer team will be more than at least 11 players. Would that be a factor in assessing technically, if you like, the performance of Nigeria with regard to numbers, events, and then medal haul?
Yes, it is. To be honest with you, team sports are always where you look at the numbers. You would also aggregate the entire team as one entity.
That's right.
So the numbers don't really tell the story. The question now is, listening to the three wise people that understand what's going on, is comparative advantage is very strategic. I'll tell you, yesterday night I had a look at the Egyptian strategic plan for these games. It's online. You can go there and check it out. And they made the associations motivate in 2017. South Africa did it last year. So your team, if you are rowing, you had to go to the federation, you had to go to the ministry to say, this is the goal, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, these are the players that are going to participate, and this is the training funding that we require. The Egyptians have been in training camp for a year. It started in January 2018 till a week before. Different competitions have been targeted, and the All-Africa Games is a stepping stone towards Japan 2020. So it's not the end of whatever it is. It's a process, because the plan was heading towards 2020. It was a 4-year plan. And South Africa is the same. And South Africa used this as a youth development program. So they took the best and the brightest under 24. That was the goal for South Africa. Take everybody under 24 who has been dominating locally and put them on that track towards the Olympic Games. So this is just a stepping stone to say, okay, we've seen you. Here are the things we want to tweak before we go and meet the world. When you take on Africa, this is where you are, and we will now benchmark you against the world. Everybody has said it. A strategic plan is what is required. You see, sports in Nigeria is still seen as a social issue. It's just gather the people together and send them off. If you are going for any international competition, if the government does not see this as a strategic plan to say, if we want to be the best in this, let us go out there. And Uche is right. A lot of those sports that we find, and no disrespect to the members of the different associations, a lot of them are still at recreational levels. You are not ready for prime time. You're not ready for even a regional competition amongst the West African League. You're not ready yet. So, and we have to be honest with ourselves. I'm being very honest. Gymnastic, rowing, canoeing, yes. What's the strategic long-term plan? What's the basis that we've built? How many children in our schools know how to row a canoe? How many places do we have where the children can train and young people involved in the sports? If we are now doing what I think everybody is doing, taking the shortcut and looking for diasporans to just fill in the gap, it's a lazy approach to go. Because even if you take the diasporans, are you taking the structure that trains that diasporan to become competitive at that sport? So if you're taking the kid out of the US, are you taking the structure that allows you to now come back here and put it on the ground and say, this is what we're going to do? So if you calculate and say 314 vis-a-vis 127 medals, you're being a bit unfair. Because again, if you look at the team sports, if you look at everything that goes into that account, you will find that this is a better performance than the last three we've done. If you really segregate and analyze the numbers, you will find that this is better than what we've done. And Uche is spot on and Mary is spot on to say it is the resilience of the individuals, because these kids look at this and say, this is my one chance in 4 years to really come out. and do something. I'll give you an example. Men's athletics has been down since the Olakpa days have gone 12 years ago. And now we've risen above and had 5, 6 young men under 30 right now competing with each other, trying to jostle for who's Nigeria's fastest vis-a-vis Africa's fastest. If you put Nigerians on the league list of African sprinters, you will find that we're dwindling within the 5th and the 9th positions. We're not there yet, but there's a structure in place. There's a process in place for that, and that's very deliberate. But the problem we still have is a lot of the recreational sports. Nigeria needs to decide strategically. If we're not ready for prime time, we're not ready for prime time. Let's take those sports and continue developing those sports locally and go international with what we know is a plan. And that has nothing to do with the federation. That has everything to do with the country and the people who run the sports in the country, to say, we're not ready for rowing, we're not ready for canoeing, we're not ready for gymnastics. But it doesn't mean that the sport dies. It just means that where we are in relationship with everybody else that competes internationally, that's the gulf. And it will take us 4 years to get it done, and by 2023 in Ghana, we will be ready to go international. So yes, kudos to the kids who really went out there and performed. Kudos to Al Hassan we did not hear any stories of people rioting, asking for camp allowances, and only just the fact that we had 3 supporters clubs in one of our matches, and the sound was distorting, that international commentators were saying, we don't know who is actually supporting Nigeria.
Of support.
Yes. So we will get there and we will get better. But it's high time that Nigeria as a country has to look at sports at international event as a strategic item that we need to use to promote the country and help the young people involved.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I think over the years, sports have been the unifying factor in Nigeria. It's not as if Nigerians are not interested, they do not know the necessity for strategically planning for major events like African Games, Olympic Games, and what have you. Let's bring back Mary Onyali here, because she has a lot of experience, when it comes to not just being an athlete, but of course in terms of management, but because being an athlete has exposed you to understand the fabric of planning and the fabric of management of any sport. Now, Uche, Mike, and of course Al Hassan, they have all made inputs, and I'd like you to respond to some of the issues you raised. So we talked about the resilience of the individual performers, which gave us the number of medals that we have, but not necessarily because of the plan. And why is it that all sporting activities in Nigeria depend largely on government for funding? What is the way out? What should be the role of the private sector, in ensuring that Nigeria is well prepared when we are embarking on multinational sporting events like Africa Games? What can be done to reverse the trend?
I have to come back to Sister Uche. Sis, I think if you come a little bit closer to the federations, you will understand that they are really not lazy. They are trying their hardest to see how they can raise funds for their federations to run their federations properly. Yes, the Ministry of Sports is their father. They are supposed to support the federations. Yes, the federation is supposed to also go out there and source for funding for themselves to augment whatever the government has put in place. But you fail to understand that if the federations have done all they could to raise funds and it's not coming, who else do they fall back on? They fall back on the federal government, because that's their father. Raising funds for sports has been very, very difficult, because over the years, those companies or organizations that have supported sports in the past have come to regret it, because there was no accountability. The accountability was zero or very little. And sponsorships have been withdrawn. So federations are finding it very, very difficult to come to terms with how to get the sponsors to come back in. 2, whenever the federations raise funds, they are being monitored like a hawk. Yes, because those that gave you the money have to know where the money, what you're putting the money, whether you're putting the money in the right places or not. But raising it is the most difficult. My brother Enahoro, you also hit on the point of strategic planning. Strategic planning is it. After you must have raised the funds. You said it right. If we don't start now, we have 4 years between now and Ghana. I was telling the Honorable Minister in Morocco that if we don't start right now in this competition to strategically plan for Ghana, which is just a walking distance from Nigeria, we will fail woefully. And that will be very, very, very hot. Very, very hard for the federal government to bear because of our proximity to Ghana. So we need to really come up with a huge plan. Spread it out. We have categories of sports, like some of like Nahoro hinted. We have category A, B, C, and D. Category A, B, C are our Olympic-bound sports. The D, E, and so on and so forth are the ones that we take to major games like the African Games and the Commonwealth Games. Yes, we can focus a whole lot more on the Olympic-bound sports. But when it comes to the games, we should not forget the little ones, the D and the C and the Fs, because they are the ones that will actually give us the medal haul in the games. There is nothing wrong with having, pushing the funds, dividing it and putting it where it's supposed to be equally. Because if you're trying to raise the number that will go to Ghana, or our medal haul that will, in Ghana, you need to start now, and you need to start putting money in the D and the C and the D and E and F sports, because they are our medal hope in the future. Egypt, Algeria, they all planned, like you said, they've been planning since 2017. I actually know that the plan started way before that, because I have people that I competed with in the past in Egypt and Algeria that told me to take over Africa in athletics, for example, in the next 4 years. And they did it. They did it. So we need to really go back to what really worked in other places. As far as getting athletes from overseas to compete for us, it's our right. They are our children. Whenever we call on them, whenever the duty calls on them to come home, they need to come home and represent. Yes, we can also adopt the structure that helped develop these athletes for us, and adopt it, abide by it, and make sure that whatever our foreign-based athletes are gaining from overseas, our local ones should do the same. There is no need reinventing the wheel. What works for them overseas should work here. That's what the Jamaicans did. They took, once the athletes retired, like myself and the Chiomas and the Yusufs and the Falilats, they absorbed all their ex-internationals back into the system and put them to work. That's why the Jamaicans are challenging the Americans. I don't see the reason why we shouldn't do what they're doing. Jamaicans don't used to sit on the same table with us. That's how superior we were to them. But they did something right by using the people, the experiences of the people that have been there, done that, to improve themselves. I don't see the reason why we shouldn't do the same. The gold medal we picked up in gymnastics, my sister Uche, is from one person. It's from Uche Eke. Uche is based in the US. And you should know, you know the reason why he got the medal. Because he started early. And the facilities and the coaching where he's studying is up to par. Why we can do the same here. We have coaches. And we also need to build the capacity in our coaches, and especially in our coaches. Let's leave the facility out because we have beat it way too much. Our coaches need to be trained and retrained. They are behind the modern technology as far as coaching is concerned in all sports. We don't have to send them out to those countries for upgrade. What we need to do is what we did in preparation of the likes of Chioma Ajunwa that gave birth to Chioma Ajunwa, the Ezinwa brothers, and so on. We brought in 5 coaches from Cuba in athletics. These coaches came here and gave birth or gave rise to multiple coaches. They trained other coaches, and when they left, they didn't take our coaches away. They left the technology and the experiences that they've given to our coaches, and that's what we're using today. So why don't we do the same in all sports? Bring in these experts, let them train our coaches here, and give us more hands to train our athletes. And then the federal government, of course, knows that their duty is to build infrastructures so that these athletes can thrive. My philosophy has always been, build it, and they will come. Just drop that structure there. I don't care what sport it is. Just leave it there. You just give it a few months or a few weeks. You see athletes trickling in there trying to figure out what it is. And they pick interest. That way we'll be able to expand on our medal table in major games and championships like this. Like the Egyptians did. They swept up the whole swimming. They went to weightlifting where we were strong, challenged us because we went to sleep. So I think the whole country needs to wake up, and wake up now if we're going to do something between now and Ghana. Remember, Tokyo is just 2 days away. We're already behind schedule, and we don't even know what the federations are doing.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mary Oyale. A number of points that you all have raised as guests, and my colleague Kirian asked the question as to what the federations are doing to ensure that it's adequate funding, and you've also responded. I know that the other guests may also wish to respond. But I want to say something. I want to ask this question against the background of our national psychology. There is no shortcut to success. But we also know from our, again, national experience that models, whether economic, political, or otherwise, that work elsewhere around the world, once they come into the Nigerian environment, those models will face challenges. And then we have our Nigerian response to our own situations. I'm raising this on account of what we talk about, early preparation, early preparation, early preparation. Look, in tennis, and I'm sure that we are all familiar with this, the typical model for elite tennis players is, one, send them to an academy. After that, get them into the junior circuit. After that, they become pros, and they begin to participate in ATP-rated tournaments and WTA-sanctioned tournaments. But the father of the Williams sisters took a different route, and we saw what has happened to both Venus and Serena. And I'm sure you recall that at Wimbledon, other Grand Slams, he would often come with a placard on which he wrote, "I told you so." In other words, I wasn't going to follow your model. If we know that in Nigeria, look, we often will have this fire brigade approach. We will wait until the last minute. Even if the president were today to give 1 trillion naira to all the federations for preparations against any event or against any games, you can be certain that those monies will not be released until the last minute. Is it therefore, in terms of our attitude, in terms of our philosophy, to say, since we know that we will wait until the last minute, even if you are told to go and register for elections, you will wait until the last minute and then be asking for extension. Can we structure our preparation, therefore, around the fact that our national psychology unfortunately predisposes us to a fire brigade approach, and then the resilience factor that comes in? Because, Mary, you recall, we have had you on this program, you keep talking about early preparation, early preparation. Now it's the same thing. 2020 Tokyo Games, it will be the same story. Can we, I'm saying, recall, there is no shortcut to success, but can we factor in our national psychology and say, we know that we'll be late, but let us see what we can do first?
Thank you. The philosophy of athletes' resilience as the only major propelling force to performance on the medal table for Nigeria is incomplete. One, government provided the funds. Government chartered the aircraft. Government kept the athletes in camp, no matter how short the camp was. Government provided the infrastructure. Government did all the administrative clearance and accreditation, the long list and accreditation of the athletes and also enabling them to participate. So I don't know how the resilience became an exception as to the key issue that led to the outstanding performance of the Nigerian delegation in the 12 All-Africa Games. But looking at the whole gamut of how to succeed in athletics, or rather in sports, especially competitive sports, the journey to elite sports, like you have said, starts in an organized manner as an academy. And that's why you find that the school sports is as old as sports itself in Nigeria. What is the situation now? The Ministry of Education has insisted that it is their statutory function to oversee sports in schools. Meanwhile, the technical know-how is domiciled in the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And that was why in 2006, a sustainable grassroots sports development blueprint was developed. It was supposed to run for 4 years. Then Patrick Ekeji was the director of sports. But it didn't take off until it got expired after the 4 years. And successive administrators did not reignite, did not review, did not bring it back. But if we are looking at sports in Nigeria from the perspective of preparation, there are 3 major issues that are critical. The consistency of the policy and the policy drivers has always fluctuated. Within the Olympic cycle, you may have 2 different leaderships with 2 different ideas. Maybe each of them not even taking the succeeding policy that ought to have provided the roadmap. So if you say the Nigerian factor, then yes, I agree with you that within the Nigerian setting, that was what we did in 2015. Rather than waiting for the funds to come at last minute, we also improvise other methodologies of getting the funds. But if you look at sports development in Nigeria from the perspective of federations, these federations have international standards. They are supposed to be independent. But in third world countries, the corporate society doesn't seem to understand the corollary between corporate social responsibility, corporate strategy for return in investment, and branding of their products through athlete development. You can pick up an athlete right from the scratch. Chika Chukwumereji, as an example, was brought up by government all through, up to bronze medal in Olympics, which he should have been a case study for a serious-minded corporate outfit to brand. So many of these athletes are there. You need to pick them from grassroots and begin to get your return on investment from mileage, promotions, and corporate social responsibility. So to cap it up, for Nigeria to remain a strong force, you have to look at the critical success factors in sports. Planning, programming, infrastructure maintenance, athlete welfare, development of coaches. Those 2 that I added, athlete welfare and development of coaches, are the ones that will make those other 3 critical factors to give us the desired results.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Planning, programming, infrastructure, development of coaches, and what have you. Uche, come in here once more. Mary made reference, to one of your, to part of what you said earlier on in connection with the fact that some federations are not doing what they ought to be doing, to be able to raise funds and train some athletes. But I also wanted to come in the area of individual training for optimal performance. We talk about infrastructure, and that has to do with some equipment, some tools that are required to train an individual for a particular sport. There was a report some time ago last year, when some of the facilities at the now MKO Abiola Stadium, we had a number of facilities there that were abandoned and left to rot. and likewise in other, stadiums across the nation. And Uche, who won gold, is it in taekwondo or gymnastics, is based in America. Yeah. So where there's facilities for him to train. And he has exhibited that in the 12th Africa Games. So what I'm driving at is the fact that we don't seem to have the necessary infrastructure to train individuals who are the key performers in all these sporting activities. So that's why resilience came in, Al-Hassan. That's why Mary Onyali talked about resilience in terms of, look, I am going to do it. It's not just for the nation, but for myself as someone who wants to develop, whatever sport, that you are in. So what is missing in terms of training? There are many Nigerians who are running for other countries. So names of Nigerians who are running for other countries who have refused to come and run for Nigeria, perhaps because of all the issues that we have raised here. What is the way out?
First and foremost, when you talk about infrastructure, even if you have the infrastructure, sometimes maintenance is a problem. So I will give you an example of cycling. The velodrome was not used for the past 16 years, but someone decided to plan to have a competition there this year, and it was used for the first time in 16 years. And maybe continuously we'll keep using it. Talking about Uche, he came all the way from California, came to Nigeria, and the first thing he said when he entered the gymnastics complex was, there is no facility here, coming from where he's coming from. And he didn't come with his coach, because I know if he had come with his coach, okay, let's get on the next flight and let's just leave. There's no infrastructure. But he still trained with them. He was still there for a few days before he went back. Now, why I made reference to gymnastics is, what if we don't have people that actually want to develop on their own without the federation? It becomes a problem. Most of these athletes you see, some of them just run and try to make a record impression or record performance for themselves. They give themselves targets. And when they give themselves targets, some of them even get poached by other countries because they know that we don't have the structure. Yes, talking about the federations and what I said about federations not being proactive. I know why I'm saying that. Now, Mary said something. One of the reasons why corporate bodies don't come is because of accountability. I can reel out like 2-3 federations that if you give them money, you can't have the blueprint or the account of how they spent the money, and nothing. And most corporate bodies feel that if I take this person to court, nothing will happen. The sports is where most of the times you don't go to jail. So I don't want to spend that kind of money. So now, if you approach a corporate organization and promise that you're going to spend the money wisely and you're going to train individuals, good. You have to show us who you want to train. You have to show us how the person has performed. You have to show us what competitions you have enrolled or put the person in, both in Africa, both globally, for the person to compete. That is how you know that this person is progressing. But you don't just wake up, like the Athletics Federation of Nigeria. You wake up, you get all the whole athletes, you take them to Kaduna, you have a jamboree, you come back, and you now tell us that, oh, the list we have, we're not adding your Dudurus, your Kagbares, we are not adding. And you ask, were they at that same event? Were they there to try? Were they at the tryout? The answer is no. That means you're still falling back on them. It becomes a problem. Most of them are at their departure lounge. And if you don't get the new ones, you don't get people to replace them. We keep struggling, trying to recycle them. It happens in football. It's happening in tennis. If not for the fact that Aruna Kadri lost, if he was a champion, you would expect him to be at the Olympics. You expect him to be at, if possible, the All-African Games in Ghana. It becomes a problem until we concentrate and say, federations concentrate and say, this bundle of talent, we have to help them. We have to make sure that we bring out the best in them, and they do their bit. Every day is not government Christmas Day. You need to start working. Why I said most federations don't work is because I have seen them. If you look at tennis, you find out that somebody like Godwin Kienka is with the NCC, bringing out talents every year in, year out. They always sponsor. Now, where are those talents? Most of them travel outside the country. They don't represent Nigeria. How has NTTF absorbed them to come and play with them? it's not working. It doesn't work that way. So now we need to start all those academies that bring producing and taking them outside the country. When they come back, the federation needs to absorb them and make sure that they give them the adequate support, or else we're just...
and I'm sure, Uche, thanks, and I'm sure some persons would also say how well run are the federations. That's the point. We're talking about an empty gymnasium, for instance, where you had very paltry facilities, and I'm sure not necessarily the federation in charge of that, but I'm sure that Mike, I mean, if you were to go around, you'll find that a number of those federations, they have SUVs. They will budget for those ones. They will budget for their DTA when they are traveling around the country. They will budget for their ESTA code. But in the meantime, the cost of one SUV is enough, or probably one or two SUVs can give you a modern gymnasium for practice. That is one. That's to say how poorly some of those federations are governed. But still, I would like to return to this point. I mean, you can speak to the other issues, Mike. Look, our national psychology, how do we factor that in into how we get things done? I know there's no shortcut to success, but we would know that we will always confront those things.
Of course.
Yes.
Look, I'll tell you, if you look at any government in the world, and my sister, my older sister, Mary Iyalia, I would just beg to differ from her point of view. There's no place in the world that going to international competition is government business. Trust me, it's not government business. We are dealing with floods, we're dealing with security, we're dealing with health, we're dealing with kids going back to school, we're dealing with teachers' salary, we're dealing with a lot more stuff. But governments around the world have said, this is the impact of sports on my national psyche. Kirian said it initially, that it was a unifier. It is a unifier. So if it is a unifier, let us sit down, even in the National Assembly, and say, sports is a unifier. And we need to be able to constructively go round and do what we need to do as a government. So which would mean that, okay, in every local government, let's get a mini stadium or a sports environment. Leave it for the local government to manage how that goes, because they have 700,000 people in that local government and only one training school, which is in a secondary school. It won't work for our people. So we need to deliberately build something for health and well-being and sports. If you go around every country in the world, the associations are an independent organization. When you are going to represent the country, it is the country's business. It is the country's business. As long as you're putting on the green, white, green uniform, it is our business. So we have seen you going there in 4 years' time. It is not our... We just tell you, if you're going to represent Nigeria, this is the objective for us. And that's it. Good luck to you. You've got 4 years to go get ready for that. And this is our template for who should represent the country and what we are looking to get. If you are not one of the top 20 in the world, sorry, you can't go. That's Nigeria's position, because we have 9,000 children who need to compete for that 20 spaces, and we want to take only the best Nigerians to represent Nigeria, because we want to use them as role models for every primary school child, which is what Al-Hassan is talking about. So it is not government business. When you see associations waiting for the largest, government will give you money 6 weeks before time. That is what it is supposed to do. You are supposed to have gone and assess your training platforms. Government is only ready for the competition. It will give you money 6 weeks to time, and that's what it is supposed to do. It is not supposed to fund your association, because it is a policy arm that says that these policies are supposed to be the national sporting policies for which everyone should adhere to, and this is how we think. This is a unifier of our people. So we will drop a stadium in each local government, 776 of them. Materials will be produced by Nigerian companies or the associations. Children in primary school will be registered. The disconnect between the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Sports has to be bridged by a national policy. If you say you are the Ministry of Education in charge of sports in schools, great, but you have to talk to the Ministry of Sports to give you the right coaches and a training plan for everybody who is going to work inside sports in schools. And the Ministry of Education is going to checkmate you, because all those kids are eventually going to be representing the national team. So that discussion and that template has to happen. The National Assembly is involved, because there's a strategic plan for Nigeria to say, we want to be champions of the world. Your Jamaican example, if you go back, it's online. If you go back and look at the national policy for Jamaica in the year 2002, all the way through to 2010, the country is made up of 3 million people. 300,000 children are registered since 2002. A lot of them are now coming out of the pipeline now. If you get 10% of your population registered in sports, notified by the country, everybody knows who is a cricketer, everybody knows who is a footballer, everybody knows who is an athlete. Since the day they were in primary 5, there is a primary 6 national champion in Jamaica. National champion. A kid, 12 years old, is a national champion for primary school sports because it's a deliberate act of the country, because 10% of its population is registered, and that's what the country wants, because it sees that as a competitive advantage to promoting brand Jamaica. Take away the outlook of music, take away everything else in cricket, but we want to be brand Jamaica has to be stronger, and that is a country position. So when you hear the national associations of different sports looking at something, it is the possibility that when you look from a policy angle, where is the guiding policy? Now, this is where you're coming to your point. Where is the national policy that gives rise to Al Hassan to say, well, I'm taking 300 Nigerians to go and compete? My template is the national policy, because the national policy says when I go out with any Nigerian, this is the end result of what I need to do. So everybody that is going with me understands that they are representing Nigeria from a strategic point of view. But we are also very, very mindful that our representative is number 26 in Africa. And we understand that is number 26. So we understand that we can move him from number 26 and we'll be satisfied if he becomes number 10. That's our goal. And then we start to market him to Nigerian private sector and say, look, this kid went as number 26 and he was only first round knockout every time. Now he's got into the semifinals. So he's top 8 in Africa. And in top 8 in Africa puts him at top 30 in the world. That's a marketing tool for tons of primary school kids who look at him and say, oh, if he could go and do it, then I'm interested. Because this same kid is going to go back and live in his village. He's going to go back and live in town. He's going to take Keke Marwa. They will see him on TV and see him in the Kekes and say, oh, that's the guy who moved from 26 to 10. But that is a deliberate federal government policy.
Exactly, Mike. We thank you so much. We're going to take a short break now. I recall, Kingsley, those days, we used to have a games master in secondary school.
That's right.
And those games masters must have read physical education. Right. So
health and physical
education. So there should be that synergy between the education sector and, of course, sports. And so,
although when we were in primary school, it wasn't called HPE then, it was called PT. Normally we patch it on your back pocket. PT, physical training.
All right, and so let's take a short break here. When we come back, we'll continue with the program. It's a good conversation going on here. We thank you for staying with us, and please return again when we come back.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You're here already?
No. Now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me job questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time thing.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I am sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Later.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the NTA. We have some reactions from our viewers who have used our Twitter handle. You see that usually on the left-hand side of your screen. Kirian, let's go quickly through these tweets. Raji Afiz Abidemi, honestly, Team Nigeria tried their best. The Nigerian government should also try as much as possible to encourage and motivate teams that represent us.
All right, from Law Alpha C, Nigeria indeed performed beyond my expectations, taking into consideration fire brigade preparations, poor or no motivation at all, and general depreciation of sports facilities with no political will to improve. And I would say congratulations to Nigeria.
Sani Michael Amakoje tweets, the Nigerian contingent coming second behind Egypt is commendable. However, we have the potential, if properly harnessed, to dominate the continent like the Super Falcons for years if we do the right thing. Thumbs up to Team Nigeria as we expect better outing in the next edition.
All right, from Ibatibi Zekeri, despite some lapses, Nigeria performed excellently. The discovery of the young athletes actually helped Nigeria. Hence, such discovery, training and retraining should be prioritized against the usual norm. Preparation only when there is tournament. Early preparation stands you out.
Abdulaziz Abdurauf, now sports is science and we have to get scientific. Let us start building our sports personalities from schools. Let's have universities that admit based on performances in sports so we don't have to depend on federations for preparations.
And so says Cecilia Korama as well. Our governors must rise up to engage and tap the abundant talents in our youth in sports that will bring about peace in Nigeria.
Well, Kirian, again, those are the tweets that we want to take in the meantime. Let's return to our Enugu Network Center, where Mary Oyali is still with us. Mary, if we see you on the screen right now, that's one point that I would also like us to explore. Where we complain about federations, we complain about the role of government and, you know, in trying to help develop our sports. Well, of course, you're very familiar with the U.S. system and perhaps also other jurisdictions. I was just wondering, in terms of private sector participation, what can we do to reignite and then seek to imitate what happens elsewhere through the advent of clubs? As you very well know, but the young persons, who take part in a wide variety of sports abroad usually belong to clubs. It is from the clubs that they are raised, and then, of course, the federations also have their template. They help them, to say, look, these are the minima that we would require from your attendees or your participants before they can come up. But what do we have in Nigeria? We have a number of social clubs. Most of them are drinking joints and all kinds of things. No sports is being encouraged. The ones where you have golf clubs, people go there to just negotiate deals, and that is the end. But in terms of having sporting clubs, sports clubs in various cities, if you count the number of cities we have in Nigeria, assuming you were to have a club in each city or two clubs in each city for different kinds of sports, would the story not be different?
You're very right. Let me take the issue of federation getting sponsored or taken care of by corporate organizations. We used to have what we call tax rebate. Organizations or companies don't do corporate social responsibilities. They don't take it seriously anymore. Why will I be giving you money and I don't have anything in return? Let's go back to the laws and the relationship or the agreement we had, I believe, 10 years ago between the Ministry of Sports and the FRS. There was an agreement that all organizations or corporate organizations that are willing to cooperate or sponsor sports to help ease the stress on government can have a tax rebate. If that issue is revisited, I think we will be halfway near our target. On the other issue of where we get these athletes are actually, they don't fall from the sky. They are gotten from several areas. One, state. In the state, you have to, like my brother Nahore said, you have to deliberately make sure you plan sporting facilities in your local governments. If all local governments of Nigeria have a sporting facility, I don't see any reason why we should be looking for athletes anywhere, in any sport, in any event, to take to the major games. From the state and local government, we now move to the federal. These athletes are moved up in that order. When they get to the national, the federation sees them and absorbs them, repackage them, retool them, and send them on international competitions with the help of the federal government, in this case, the Ministry of Youth and Sports. The last minister was struggling to balance the youth that is under him and sports. Can we please, at this moment, after seeing that what happened the past 4 years didn't work so well technically and strategically for sports, go back and bring back the National Sports Commission? If the National Sports Commission policy have passed through the different stages, I heard, I'm not sure, that is up to the two houses to harmonize it and have our president assent on it. What's holding it? This will ease the problem of technicalities or the burden on the Ministry of Sports. The NSC is supposed to be the technical arm that supports the Ministry of Sports to help him see to the issues of states and athletes' development. Then we also have clubs. We have the MOCs, the making of champion clubs. We have several clubs all over the country dotted out. I'm talking about athletics now, I don't know about other sports. We have several clubs, athletes training in different clubs, but these clubs are not properly structured. They need to be properly structured and monitored, because we can't just have clubs jumping up from every part of the country and not giving us what we really want. We need to also have a system that will structure and monitor what they are doing, so that they will be giving us, we are sure that they are giving us what we need when we need it. My brother on the on the issue of sending athletes, the ministry don't have any issues or business supporting federations to taking athletes over, to international competitions. I disagree. Once the federations take athletes to international competitions, be it Ghana, be it Cameroon, they are in green, white, green, and as such must be supported by the ministry. The federations don't have any business training athletes. It's the LGAs, the state, then it comes to them, and they harmonize these talents and send them to international competitions to be able to test themselves outside of the country, outside of the state, outside of the regions they came from. That is the only way they will be able to see between them and their coaches, are they doing the right thing? Are they measuring up? Are they going to get ranked? The ranking you're talking about, the top 10, top 20 you're talking about, is gotten from them competing overseas, internationally. Just lean it out with their other counterparts that they are going to meet in those major championships or games. If you don't test yourself, you won't know where you are. So once the federations gives their yearly plan to the ministry on time as to where they want to be or the preparations they need to have before going to a major champion games or Olympics, for example, it should be taken seriously. It's not a jamboree. The athletics Kaduna trials that we had, obviously, I heard my sister say it's a jamboree. It's not. We found it difficult to get the foreign-based athletes to come to Kaduna, because the federation gave the ministry gave the federation 2 timetables. They instructed that all federations must have their trials at a certain time to be able to get the numbers out. It didn't suit the AFN. It messed up.
Mary Onyali, we would like to thank you immensely, for your robust contribution this morning as an experienced athlete. We're just pausing it because we are running short of time. And what Mike and Ahura actually said, if I understood him, was the fact that the government takes charge the moment the preparations are concluded. But he was saying that the federations should do their homework, by doing the training aspect of the athletes and preparing them. But government takes over, when it comes to perhaps all the diplomatic, issues, and then maybe taking care of their, funding their flight and what have you. But that the preparatory stage or stages, as the case may be, that the federations should have done their work, before government comes in. Now, government comes in perhaps 6 weeks to the time, and 6 weeks is not enough for any team to prepare for a global competition. I think let's make that clear. Let me bring in Al Hassan. Your concluding thoughts on this, the issue of bridging the gap, between Ministry of Education and that of Sports with respect to talent hunt, discovering the younger ones who will be the future representatives of Nigeria in sporting activities. What can be done? Briefly, please.
I think we should, in order to bridge that gap, we should revisit that sustainable grassroots sports development blueprint that said that there should be an interministerial committee, including even the Ministry of Finance, with Ministry of Youth and Sports, Ministry of Education, and even Ministry of Social Women and Women Affairs, yes, in order to make sure that all agencies that have one degree of contribution to make in the churning up of athletes from schools and communities to interface and bring up, because if you don't get these athletes from schools, picking athletes from the streets will be very difficult for you to guide, and you may not get them to become coaches or administrators after their active days.
Okay, Hassan, thank you very much. Mike, your closing thoughts, but again, let me draw attention to what I said in terms of having the advent of clubs where you can also have, young talents who will come in. I'm just wondering, Joe Eriko, who turned out to be one of Nigeria's soccer coaches, was a goalkeeper for NEPA. In those days, ECN and then NEPA. Nitel, P&T Vasco da Gama in Enugu that used to give your Rangers,
Zik Athletic Club was the first athletic club in Nigeria. In the
absolutely. 60s. You had Share Club. Share Club was in Surulere. Yes. Today, if you were to take a look at the list of companies on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, you would ask yourself, look, assuming we had just said 10% or 20% of these companies having clubs, maybe in different parts of the country. One would say, look, our focus is boxing. Another would say our focus is that. So might that not help, Mike?
Yeah, well, it will. But again, it comes out from on what umbrella is all of this shrouded underneath. There has to be a national policy. A national policy that says, okay, we expect is the same way the NCC is being funded, the National Lottery Trust Fund is being funded. All of this is saying your X amount of your money must go into that. If you do that as a national sports policy, where Al Hassan's document that was written years ago is brought up and put underneath that policy to say, this is our grassroots template, it would allow companies to take a deliberate move to say, okay, I will get a tax rebate. Going back to what Mary is saying, I'll get a tax rebate. But it's not just a tax rebate. I would actually be recognized in a different sort of way for doing this. So I am going to encourage Kamaru and his brothers that are training the local boxers in Mushiolosha. I'm going to put money in there with them, small money, but I know that this is the area that I want to be part of, because the private clubs would allow the health and well-being of my staff, the health and well-being of my customers. So there is a deliberate move. We need a policy that is going to be driving all of this.
All right, Mike. Uche, your closing remarks. Actually, we have raised a number of issues. Just take one of them and conclude your your contribution. Yeah.
Okay. Getting to the athletes, you need to get them, prepare them on time, as I always say. Secondly, you need to train coaches. You don't necessarily have to send them abroad. And thirdly, you have to be an accountable person. Federations need to learn how to be accountable. You don't just wake up and ask for money. You get it and you spend it the way you like and you say, I'm under the Ministry of Youth and Sport. It doesn't work that way. Until we start taking steps and knowing that if we have a leaking roof in the National Stadium, if you can't get the government, fix it, write it down. This is what we spent. Please, can you reimburse us? If we start doing these things deliberately to actually promote our people, promote the sports, help government to actually put these infrastructures to place, then we're good.
All right, Uche Nwodo, sports analyst, thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much.
Mike Idahoro, regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, sports analyst, thanks a lot for your contributions.
It's a pleasure. Good Morning Nigeria.
And Al Hassan Yakmoud, chef de mission, Team Nigeria to the just concluded 12th African Games and former Director General of National Sports Commission. Thanks a lot also for your insight.
Thank you so much.
And from our Enugu Network Center, we're joined by the African Gazelle, Mary Onyale, Olympian and proud Nigerian, of whom Nigeria is also very proud. Thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. All right, now to complete our program today, we go again into our sports segment.